Why would anyone want to work when you genuinely have the option of saying you're depressed and so you can stay at home? And then when you do get a job, the amount of taxes you pay is like, okay, you've got a job now, then the government's saying, bend over, let's go.
So this is a government that couldn't even imagine ripping up the Human Rights Act 1998.
Yeah.
But Magna Carta 1215, well, we've got a court case backlog to clear. It's really fascinating.
On it anyway. I think genuinely most celebrities are not very bright. When you're in this kind of very small mainstream industry where like everyone knows everyone, you kind of toe a particular line.
Hello and welcome to the Spike podcast. I'm Fraser Myers, thrilled as ever to be joined by Spike's editor Tom Slater.
Hello.
And delighted to have a returning guest, friend of the show, Esther Krakue.
Hi.
Thanks so much for coming back. We've got loads to talk about today. We'll be discussing the fibs of Rachel Reeves, David Lammy's war on juries, and the celebrity march against the far right. Now, a little bit later, we'll be talking about Labour's assault on our ancient liberties, but you can at least protect your freedoms when you go online. Thanks to our partners, Private Internet Access, or PIA for short, there's an easy and effortless way to beat the government's spies and censors. PIA is the VPN I use and trust whenever I'm accessing the internet. A VPN, or virtual private network, is an app that hides your IP address and safeguards your internet connection through an encrypted tunnel. Instead of giving away your personal information and location to the world, PIA lets you change your IP address to one of 91 countries. This means that you can gain access to websites and services that are only available in those locations. And it's not just that. Did you know that streaming services like Netflix and Prime Video have huge catalogues of content, but you can only access a fraction of it from your own country? Using PIA to change your location opens up a whole new world of streaming. Paying for Netflix without using PIA is a bit like paying for front row seats at the cinema, but being forced to sit in the hallway. PIA is also essential for keeping yourself safe online. It protects you from the prying eyes of hackers, internet service providers, and anyone else with an unhealthy interest in your personal information or online activity. Personally, I would never go online without it again. And because PIA is available for all platforms, I never need to worry about my safety or privacy. It works on Windows, Apple Macs, iPhones, Androids, and more. Even better, you only need one subscription to protect yourself across all the devices you own. So sign up now to the world's most transparent VPN provider and take advantage of our special offer. Spike podcast viewers and listeners can get 86% off a subscription to Private Internet Access. That's just £1.67 a month. And you'll also get an extra 4 months thrown in completely for free. To take advantage of this incredible deal, just go to piavpn.com/spiked. That's piavpn.com/spiked. Signing up is totally risk-free. There's a 30 money day back guarantee and 24/7 customer support. You won't regret it. Sign up now at piavpn.com/spiked. Rachel Reeves, the chancellor, is in a bit of trouble. She's been accused essentially of outright lying about the figures she presented in the budget. The Office for Budget Responsibility, the fiscal watchdog, is essentially saying that the black hole that she, warned us so much about, that she even gave an unprecedented Downing Street speech about, trying to roll the pitch for tax rises ahead of the budget, wasn't really real. And that actually maybe Reeves might have even had a £4.2 billion surplus. This suggests, Tom, that actually all those tax rises, the £26 billion tax rises, were a political choice, mostly to cover for a big splurge in welfare spending. What have you made of this?
Well, she's so bang to rights, isn't she? And the timeline that's been set out now by the OBR makes that crystal clear. I mean, they were seemingly indicating to her that they were in a much better economic position as early as like August, where they were suggesting maybe the black hole's a few billion or something in that area.
Can anyone fill Rachel Reeves' black hole? That is the question.
And that's the title of the podcast as well, if we can get away with it. And in the months that followed, you had Rachel Reeves continue to, as you say, sort of roll the pitch, as is the cliche of the day, for these tax rises. Originally actually putting, maybe 1 or 2p on income tax rather than the freezing of the tax thresholds, but nevertheless, it's kind of become a distinction without a difference to a certain extent. And then most damningly, the fact that on the 31st of October, I believe, they told her that they did have this surplus. She actually had a bit of money to play around with. And then 4 days later, she has this press conference essentially saying, without coming out and saying that these hikes needed to be made, basically made that case. So particularly in the context of the head of the OBR having to step down over some junior Herbert accidentally posting their analysis and therefore posting the content of the budget. The fact that the same sorts of questions aren't really being asked, at least internally, of Rachel Reeves, given the fact that she's straightforwardly misled both the public, MPs, the media, it's astonishing, really. I mean, I think it's a reminder that this budget was primarily for the consumption of Labour MPs. They're happy having banked the welfare stuff. They're more than willing to put up with both having been misled themselves and with the public being misled. But it continues to give the impression that this government is particularly deceitful, and deceitful for the wrong reasons. It's just because of the fact that they wanted to please those backbenchers, hike welfare spending even though it's already out of control. Politicians being economical with the truth is hardly anything new, but I think when you're in a government that's really in trouble, and also, let's face it, clutched their pearls so many times over the years about what Boris Johnson may or may not have promised or may not have said, it looks particularly bad for them, doesn't it?
And in terms of the details, it's worth stressing, in case anyone got the misleading impression, that this was not because the economy was doing particularly well that Reeves had this surplus. It was actually because inflation had gone up, and that had pushed up tax receipts. So the OBR had done this big downgrade on productivity. The OBR has always got productivity wrong. It finally, after years and years of making mistakes about productivity growth, has said, we need to change our model. It says, there's, 16 billion or something, deficit. That's the sort of origin of the black hole. But then Rachel Reeves misleads about where all the new money is coming from, which is coming from higher inflation. I mean, it's strange, isn't it, to have a chancellor going around saying, actually, the situation is so much worse. I've done a terrible job. Yeah. I have no choice but to do this. I'm completely powerless. What's going on?
We've been catfished. It's kind of like going on a Tinder date and seeing someone who's clearly 50 kilos heavier than they advertised. But I think it's even bigger than just being strange that she's lied about this. It's an affront to democracy, because we have a fundamentally different government than what we elected. Mm. And I think that's, if this was a few years ago and it was a Tory government, I mean, the Labour Party were waxing lyrical about it. You never hear the end of it. And what the last budget can be described as nothing else than financial sodomy. Like, it's just ridiculous. I cannot believe she's coming back for more. Yeah. And there've been these fantastic memes going around saying she has to reset GCSE maths, or, they have to ask her, like, because apparently one of her staff doesn't actually know what guilt yields are and all that.
I think someone asked for an explanation on that.
But it's just, all jokes aside, this is a fundamentally different government than the country was promised. And I think in the spirit of democracy, it's a complete affront to what people expect. And this is why you get interest in politics at an all-time low, because people just think, what's the point of voting? They're just going to do this. And the reason why, by the way, she's stuck with the tax hikes that she and certainly Number 10 were very involved in, is because they think, and this is attests to the lack of political instinct of Keir Starmer and his lot, that they will stick it in us now, and then 2 years down the line, when Reform have not only calcified their lead, but are actually probably gaining more traction in red seats, they can be like, here is a nice tax break before the election, as if we're all stupid. But this is banking on the fact that they last that long. Now, Labour doesn't have a tradition of getting rid of its leaders, but I think things can get so bad. This is why they're trotting out West Streeting and trying to neuter any potential rivals to Keir Starmer's leadership, because it's a complete disaster.
Yeah, it does seem like the move to lift the 2-child benefit cap was essentially Operation Save Starmer. And it was interesting hearing both Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer talking about how morally important it was to do that, to essentially to tackle child poverty. 10 minutes ago, they were saying that it's completely unnecessary and it would be grossly irresponsible to do such a thing. We're used to Starmer flip-flopping, but this is obscene, isn't it?
And it's probably more where his politics is, to the extent that he has any politics. It's more with the sort of soft left to the Labour Party who've been demanding these kinds of changes. But certainly Rachel Reeves was very keen to project that level of, that kind of image of fiscal rectitude. So to do a complete 180. And of course, we've been talking a lot about the budget kind of breaking manifesto commitments in spirit, if not explicitly, with where tax is concerned. And, that is forgivable in a situation where genuine external economic circumstances have changed. But what this has made clear is that it was a political choice. Yeah. And it's one that is really, it might, again, shore up some support amongst a certain section of the Labour base, either because they're in receipt of these benefits or because of the fact that they just get a warm feeling from a government doing things like this. But in terms of the sorts of people who they historically have represented and also really kind of would need to win back if they were going to get anywhere near a majority, this is not going to go down well at all. And I think it's, in a way, we talked a bit about this on Last Orders when you were on last week, Fraser, but in a sense, this is an admission of the fact that they're going to get nowhere near the kind of level of success they got last time around. You're just shoring up the base, really. And so it's a kind of admission of defeat to a certain extent, I dare say.
It's just, what is the logic in funding people who probably shouldn't have kids because they can't afford them, and just kind of opening the floodgates and saying, actually, you can have as many as you want? Like, it doesn't even make sense. It's the kind of sort of political gerrymandering that shows that Keir Starmer has no convictions whatsoever. He does not believe in anything. People say, oh, he's a soft left, he was a human rights lawyer. The only thing Keir Starmer believes in is that he should be in charge. He has not a single political conviction to speak of. Seriously.
Yeah.
Because if you can make such a fundamental U-turn by saying, actually, people should think whether they can have kids before they can afford them, to, oh, actually, if you have 10 kids, all of whom you probably shouldn't have had because you can't afford, here's, £8,000 in state handouts.
I think the lifting of the 2-child benefit cap is actually pretty defensible. But what is indefensible is just allowing the huge rise in people claiming welfare, people claiming incapacity benefits, people who are claiming disability benefits basically as a substitute for, it's just become a substitute for unemployment. We know that it's become to either, on the one hand, it's more lucrative than having a job, and that's partly because work is not paying very well, but also because the system encourages this. The system allows people to say, I have anxiety, I have mild depression, and for people to be able to be signed off work. And that's a tragedy for them as much as it is for
I can't even believe
for
you
the
can
state.
claim benefits by saying you have depression. Like, having a
it's
job,
extraordinary.
not having a job is depressing.
Yeah.
Like, what did you think would happen? It's just...
And getting a job is a pretty good cure for it in so many respects.
just
Getting out of the house and
busy.
having a purpose is really
Exactly.
important.
Why would anyone want to work when you genuinely have the option of saying you're depressed and so you can stay at home? It's just, and then when you do get a job, the amount of taxes you pay is like, okay, you've got a job now, then the government's saying, bend over, let's go.
Yeah. And it is telling as well that this is a peculiarly British disease, the way in which the disability and sickness benefits have shot up since COVID, particularly amongst the young. I think like the 25 to 34, that's up by like almost 70%, or up by almost 70%. And you don't see that in France, you don't see that in Germany, you don't see, this isn't long COVID, if that ever actually exists, which obviously it doesn't. But it's one of those things where this is because of the fact that the Tories let this get out of control, and also Labour have decided that it's a fundamental value of theirs that people should be put out to pasture over feeling a bit anxious about things.
Before we move on, I just want to say two of my favourite facts about long COVID. One is that the long COVID clinics in Italy shut down within months because there was no demand for it, even though Italy had some of the worst virus cases.
Of course, yeah.
And the other was that being transgender is one of the big indicators as to whether you're likely to suffer from COVID or not. So people can draw their own conclusions.
It's a very niche disease.
As to, well, it's, maybe it's a psychosomatic thing.
COVID is an anti-trans illness. That's
not COVID, long COVID specifically.
Wow.
Yeah.
Puberty blockers wreck your immune system.
COVID's real, but long COVID,
Interesting.
Anyway, I'm absolutely thrilled that our friends at Beckett's Gin are back to give you a very special deal for Christmas. As a Spike podcast viewer and listener, you can get 20% off all of their spirits. Beckett's is a fantastic company. It prides itself on using the best quality local ingredients to produce some truly superb tasting gin. I really like Beckett's barrel-aged slow gin. It's rested in a bourbon oak cask for 3 years, leaving behind rich notes of caramel, vanilla and coffee. And with the sweet flavours of cherry, plum and almond, this is definitely going to be my go-to drink as the weather gets colder. Their whiskey is another favourite of the team's. It's matured in casks that are usually used for slow gin, so you get a beautiful black cherry and vanilla flavour with a smooth honey finish. And here's the best bit. Fans of this show can get a 20% discount on all of the products I've mentioned and more. Just head over to beckettsgin.co.uk/spiked to claim your discount. That's beckettsgin.co.uk/spiked to get 20% off. We should move on to talk about David Lammy and his war on juries. I mean, David Lammy should meet David Lammy of 2020, 2021, because he was on a warpath against the Conservative government. Even during lockdown, he was upset that people were not being able to see a jury for their convictions. Now he's the man to take it away. Basically, if you are, if you're facing a case where there could be 3 years or less imprisonment, you might not see a jury. You might just be dealt with by a magistrate. Tom, this is absolutely tyrannical, right? I mean, it's hard to encapsulate how insane and authoritarian this is.
No, absolutely. And it's gone, it doesn't go as far as was originally briefed, but it still goes pretty far, and it goes further than the recommendations made by Lord Justice Leveson a little bit earlier this year. So anything with a case which could be expected to produce a sentence of 3 years or less will again not be heard by a jury. Also kind of either way cases where someone could basically opt either to have it heard by a jury or to have it just heard by a magistrate, and they'll have that right rescinded effectively. The arguments for why this is such a tyrannical, as you say, authoritarian move have been pretty well made on Spiked elsewhere in recent days. It's a fundamental part of our system that you have a jury of your peers as a check against tyranny, against the overweening power of the state. And it's pretty clearly established, even by David Lammy's own 2017 review into racism in the justice system, that juries time and again prove themselves to be far less biased, jaundiced, prejudiced, whatever you want to say, in their dealings with different defendants. And that cuts, incidentally, across ethnic lines, class lines, what have you, because you're not just having one person deliberating with themselves.
Who
it's
probably
kind of
doesn't
obvious.
live in a council estate or in a neighborhood where the realities of the defendant is a lot clearer and more obvious in their own lives. That's the point.
Exactly. And it's just
you get a genuine
cross-section of society. And it's something which it's amazing how casually this is being sort of thrown out. Now, obviously, the argument is the backlog, which is at 80,000 cases now, which has really shot up, particularly since 2016, it seems like. It's projected within quite short order to get north of 100,000 cases making their way through the system now, might not be heard till 2029. I mean, this is outrageous. But at the same time, the fact that the immediate response is, well, let's get rid of jury trials, which are a quite small proportion of the number of trials anyway, so how it would touch the size, I'm not entirely sure, rather than saying, maybe we need to invest more in the crumbling, judicial estate. Maybe we need
all the money they put towards welfare, they could have literally pumped it into the judicial system, actually pay barristers what they're worth, and just get through these cases. Build more prisons if you need to, emergency prisons. Bloody ship prisoners to Estonia like the Tories wanted to do a few years ago, and rent out empty European prison spaces that probably serve better food than ours do. Like, it's just a lack of creativity in our government, and it just shows that they're completely out of their depth. I mean, we all remember that infamous David Lammy video on his abysmal history knowledge.
Yeah.
So I'm not even going to. I think when he initially proposed
him on Celebrity
this,
Mastermind. Yeah.
exactly, and people were like, "But the Magna Carta, King James." He was just like, "Who?" Like, so I'm not even going to go into that.
I think it's Magna Carta as a Hollywood star.
Yeah, exactly.
50s,
Is she the blonde one?
Yeah.
But I think this government is completely out of its depth in a way that's actually a little bit scary. Because clearly they're not the ones making the policies. What happens is you have the likes of Rachel Reeves and David Lammy. They're given a list of options. This is the least bad option we would recommend, but these are your options. And so it doesn't encourage any sort of outward thinking. Why would your solution to a fundamental right of British citizens to be judged by their peers be, let's get rid of it, instead of let's allocate resources more effectively towards the justice system? It doesn't even make sense.
It's amazing how so many, like, basically the core fundamental aspects of the state that basically everyone agrees are essential across the political spectrum are just not dealt with.
Yeah.
Securing the border,
Prisons,
dispensing justice, providing energy and water and things like that.
Yeah.
Those are the things where there is just total neglect, where there seems to be a lot of money kicking around for, I don't know, whether it's woke nonsense or welfare or whatever it is. The core fundamental things are just not being done.
Exactly. And it's a particular problem where free speech is concerned. I mean, the Free Speech Union have done a bit of analysis pointing out that, I mean, if these changes come in, and I think they're going to meet a hell of a lot of resistance, then it seems like the lion's share of speech cases that make their way to court will be denied a jury trial. We've seen over the course of the summer of last year, when you had a case like Jamie Michael, again prosecuted for inciting racial hatred, opts for a jury trial, ends up being acquitted in 17 minutes. You've got a case like Lucy Connolly, kind of strong-armed into pleading guilty, therefore doesn't go before a jury and ends up getting 31 months in prison, although she obviously only ends up serving a fraction of it because there are no prison places and so on and so forth, and the existing policies, of course, as well. But that's a real problem. Generally speaking, it is true that juries tend to acquit more of the time. I believe it's almost twice as much of the time. And they tend to acquit at an even higher degree. It's like closer to 30% in relation to speech cases. That's actually gone up in the past few years because I think a lot of people be very alarmed by the number of cases that are finding themselves in a court when someone has done nothing more than speaking their mind. So the tyrannical nature of it cannot be more perfectly summed up by the fact that you'll have people like Jamie Michael, who was effectively prosecuted for criticising government policy in a slightly intemperate fashion, some might say, but nevertheless talking about illegal migration and being out of control, ending up not only being dragged through the courts but potentially denied a jury trial. It's really underlines just the authoritarianism of it. And it's funny what this government deems to be sacred and what it doesn't.
Yeah.
So this is a government that couldn't even imagine of ripping up the Human Rights Act 1998.
Yeah.
But Magna Carta 1215, well, we've got a court case backlog to clear. It's really
has moss
fascinating.
on it anyway.
Yeah, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, it says a lot about them.
Lammy's briefing was basically saying words to the effect of, it just happens to be a thing that we've done for a long time. It's not really a right to be tried by a jury. And it's like, oh, sorry, it is a right, and it's a really important right, and we want to fight for it. By the way, if people aren't familiar with the case of Jamie Michael, then you have to watch Spike's film, Think Before You Post, which is available on YouTube. Shall we talk about the celebrities?
Why not?
What are they up to?
The celebrities are on the march.
I know.
The celebrities are organising some of our favourite celebrities, including Paloma Faye, Fontaine's DC.
Since you have like a mansion in California, that Paloma Faye. No, I'm just checking.
But I think it's just sort of a checklist of Spike's favourite villains sometimes, organising a kind of march against what they call the far right. We know what the far right means nowadays. They literally name check the far right party that is number one in the polls, aka Reform UK.
I can't even. They're not even pretending anymore.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, look. I always, whenever I read a story about celebrities are planning to do this, I kind of have to like, and to like take a shot of rum and a shot of brandy, and then like temporarily transport my mind to a parallel universe where I give a shit what they have to say about anything. Yeah. And then when I finally managed to do that after like, copious amounts of alcohol, I just think, why do you think that you are in a position to lecture the public about anything? Like, this is what I fundamentally don't understand. Not that I'm denying them their rights to have their opinions or think that Reform are a far-right party or that the country is going in the wrong direction. I don't begrudge them any of that. I think we live in a country with free speech, and I think the priority should be defending that and not trying to tear that down because we're annoyed with what celebrities say. It's when they go beyond the pale and say, we're going to protest in London and we're going to tell the public who sponsor us because they like the way we sing or tap dance in the West End, that this is horrible, this is this. This is when I just think, you just don't get it. Mm. And I always say that these people that advocate for things like, oh, don't vote for this party because they're far right and racist, they don't have to live with the consequences of voting for the party that they do want people to vote for. This is what they don't get. The consequences of the actions that they are propagating never fall on them. Yeah. They are living in a life insulated. I mean, Paloma Faith has a home elsewhere. She literally has a house in California that I presume wasn't in the firing line of the fires there. She can literally leave anytime she wants. It doesn't make sense that these people think, oh, actually, we have a platform and then we must use it to lecture the public on a reality that we would never experience. That's what I don't get.
And it is always finger pointing at the public.
Exactly.
Is you, working people are in the wrong and need to be reined in. I mean, I don't, as you said, I don't begrudge celebrities their voice either, but it'd be nice if they said something interesting. They just strayed a little bit from the script.
The only reason I think it's in a way worth talking about is because they're just the sort of purest expression of what is actually quite mainstream across the sort of leftish political class. I mean, there's a lot of MPs who've also signed up to, and a lot of politicians, Zach Polanski and various Labour politicians, Jeremy Corbyn's in there.
Zach Polanski, I know who that is.
Rings a bell.
Are you referring to Hypnotits?
I'm talking about Hypnotits, yeah. Which we've got to keep that name going because it's got to stick. He might be the leader of the opposition the way things are going, so that would be absolutely hilarious.
And we'll still be calling it that.
No, exactly. He's got to wear that, unfortunately. But it's they're kind of the sort of more juvenile. They'll come out and say it. They'll say the quiet part out loud. And the fact that in that statement they're like, "There's a far right party topping the polls," says absolutely everything. Because that's a very mainstream sentiment amongst those people, which is that. Essentially, the past 10 years in particular that we've lived through, just because you've had voters say, you know what, we want to leave the European Union, we quite like national democracy, that was just smeared as fascist. They're now voting for parties that kind of want to finish the job of taking back control, whether it's in relation to immigration or what have you. That's just dismissed as far right. When they say far right, they mean democracy. That's essentially what we've learned. Because they cannot possibly think. I mean, Zach Polanski will openly refer to Reform as a fascist party. That is so incredibly dim on the one hand, but also actually genuinely offensive in a way. I don't like using that word very often, but not just purely to the people who run Reform and the people who vote for it, though obviously it is, but just to historical memory, like what totalitarian control, worship of war and violence, in the Nazi case, trying to exterminate all European Jewry. Do these people really think this is what Nigel Farage has up his sleeve? But it's just partly they've been driven mad by the fact that they were confronted by the reality that the vast majority of their fellow countrymen and women do not agree with them, actually don't like what they have to say.
They never say anything difficult.
No, exactly. They never say anything particularly interesting.
Like, Ryan Clark actually lost something by saying, on TV. We don't know who these men that are turning up on these dinghies are, these fighting age men.
Comment about...
Exactly, but literally very milk toast. I mean, it was very Essex. As someone who knows Essex very well, I can see this being a topic of conversation at dinner table and probably laden with much more expletives than Ryland said on daytime TV. But he actually lost something for saying that. And he was like, I'm just going to step back because this is not worth it. These celebrities never sit there and think, why do I never lose anything by opening my mouth and saying these things? It's because it's acceptable in your class. You're not risking anything. If anything, it's kind of just, it's a form of self-aggrandizement. It's like, it's kind of like the Israel-Palestine thing online. When you take one side, particularly the pro-Palestinian side, I've seen people whose follow account has shot up by 10 times because it's moved from being like a humanitarian issue and a complex geopolitical issue to being like a fandom.
Yeah.
And so you have these kind of brain-dead people that just jump on any bandwagon. This person said one line that I like about this issue, and therefore they are. I owe them a follow. I must, boost their audience. It's very strange, and the reason why they don't think that is because I think genuinely most celebrities are not very bright. I don't think I've met a celebrity, and like when you work in this industry, you meet quite a few of them. I've not met a celebrity that has impressed me in any way in terms of intellect. They're very shallow. They're very kind of when you're in this kind of very small mainstream industry where like everyone knows everyone, you kind of toe a particular line, and that line is very clear.
They're in a bit of a bubble.
Yeah, I mean, Patrick West made this point actually. That also kind of selects for conformists as well, to some extent, which makes them terrible for politics. It is worth saying though, because the posturing against the far right, obviously they have to expand the definition to include just political parties they don't agree with. But it is kind of telling that at this point in time, the far right is the boogeyman, despite the fact this is a very marginal force in British life. I mean, it does exist. You can see them, whining in Zia Yusuf's Twitter.
They couldn't even fill up a pub.
No,
the far
exactly.
right in Britain could not fill up a pub.
They are nowhere. Obviously, a few of them were, tearing up neighbours in the riots of last summer, but that was shocking by dint of how unusual it was.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the fact we do have in this country a movement which is often comes clad in black, which is deeply anti-Semitic, which has been inflicting terror on communities across the country for decades now, Islamism, and they don't have anything to say about it. I mean, that's 94% of the terror-related deaths in this country over the past 25 years are from Islamist jihadist terrorists, a genuinely totalitarian movement, and they have nothing to say about it. And incidentally, NECAP are also the signatories to that letter, who I had this added to a piece that I wrote earlier today, so I'm going to add, and allegedly said up Hamas and up Hezbollah at one of their gigs in London last year. So
roadman geopolitics.
Exactly. Like, it's incredible. So again, it's obviously it's a lame political stick with which to beat political parties you don't like, but it's also staggering that in the face of that genuine threat, in the wake of Heaton Park synagogue attack and all the rest of it, that they don't see it, that they're not talking about.
I hope they keep doing it though.
It is
because
if you missed this one, the great thing is if you don't get to make the March Against Racism, then you can go to the Transmission celebrity concert for trans acceptance.
Okay,
so that's going to be fun because that's also got Zach Polanski's going to be there as well.
That's
Ollie Alexander from Years and Years, Sugar Babes, remember them? I don't know which iteration of them. Sophie Ellis-Bextor.
I think it's the original because I think the newer girls don't. I think
they've cycled through it so many times.
I think most people just
remember
the original, and I actually followed the Sugar Babes. I'm so embarrassed. I remember this.
So they're raising money for Jolyon Morm's Good Law project.
For the Fox or for who?
For the Fox Killer.
Yeah.
For the Fox.
I thought the money was being raised on the Fox to get a little coffin.
No, if only. No. I thought he was
trying to get a nice casket or something.
No, for his little legal charity. No, yeah. So there's loads. So there's plenty to wet your whistle on if you're into celebrity politics.
I really hope they keep doing this because what's happening in the US is that celebrities are realizing, and I'm not sure if you've seen the Jennifer Lawrence video. She was like, "No one listens to us anyway." I was like, "Yes," because
the penny is dropping.
Exactly, because we don't like you. But what actually happened is now people are thinking, and it's become a culture within a culture. Whoever the celebrity's back, we vote to the opposite.
Yeah.
And that's becoming it's becoming the middle finger effect here. Like if they keep demonizing reform and people are saying that the phones are getting stolen in London, or they're not entitled to jury trials, or some scrounger on the road who has 20 kids is getting more money than them that actually has a proper job. Exactly, and that's who the celebrities back. These fantasists like the Greens, whose economic policies are illiterate, to put it nicely. Then they're just going to fuel reform.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen. Yeah. So I hope they keep going because
we'll go against the celebrities, except Sydney Sweeney, obviously. Gotta make an exception.
I must say this, Sydney Sweeney's era-defining rack. Oh my God. Like, I feel like every time she walks out, it says, Sydney Sweeney, EDR. Like,
Wonder if Zach Polanski had any involvement in that. But there you go.
I don't think she was a customer of his. Yeah.
I think we better wrap up that section there. So
Before we get flagged for something.
yeah. So
What does EDR mean?
So, thank you for watching the Spiked podcast. But the conversation does not end there, because if you are a Spiked supporter, we're about to have Spiked podcast unlocked. Was Zara Sultana quite interesting saying she wanted to nationalise
The entire
literally
economy, yeah.
the entire economy?
She's significantly to the left of Lennon on that question. And it was amazing because that was an interview of Owen Jones, and you can see him in real time kind of being, wait a second.
If you're not a supporter, please sign up now and you can hear the rest of our conversation. Thank you so much for watching the Spiked podcast, and thanks to our friends at Private Internet Access for sponsoring us. Now's the time to take control of your digital life and get PI8 for 86% off. Click the link in the description below or scan the QR code on the screen. And remember, if you're a Spiked supporter, then this episode isn't over yet. You can now watch the Spiked podcast unlocked. Just go to the Spiked website, log in, and you'll see it on the homepage. So join us there right now. See you in a bit.